Well, welcome today, and thank you for being a part of this coalition webinar with our friends from Moran Technology Consulting. Moran is Charlie. I've known Charlie for many, many years, and I do know that he hires the absolute best, which we have two of the absolute best people here today, in Jim and Scott. And they're going to be sharing with you about key to continuous improvement for your identity and access management, which tends to be a fairly complicated thing that they're actually going to tear apart and make very simple for you. So, Scott, Jim, I'm going to leave you with it, but thank you for being with us, and thank you all for being a part of this webinar.
Thank you, Keith. And thanks, everyone. Good afternoon. As Keith mentioned, today's session is focused on identity and access management and how it is a critical component to actually achieving continuous improvement on your campus. So the topic today, traditionally in higher education, IT leadership viewed digital identity services, IAM, as middleware, that is, as plumbing, something that was necessary but not strategic. The topic for today is to really focus on how we raise awareness and recognition that isn't the case. The example of that would be when you think about things like user experience. So IAM is not only critical in terms of your cybersecurity posture, reducing compliance risks, but identity and access management is key and important to most, if not all, of the strategic initiatives on your campus, including things like improving the user experience for your students. And that impacts retention, recruitment, success, and it's a necessary component to address many of the changes today, like the growth of non-traditional academic programs. So we're going to talk about awareness, the strategic role of IAM. Then we're also going to talk about a few practical steps in terms of where do you begin and how do you move your IAM program towards achieving continuous improvement. So I'm Scott Wyant. I am the Vice President of the Digital Identity and Security Practice for Moran. I have over 20 years experience working in higher education IT, and most of that 20 years has been focused on working with colleges, working with college consortiums, and working with universities to assess and improve their IAM programs, looking at awareness, collaboration, operations, business process change, and of course, technology. Jim?
Hey, good day, everyone. My name is Jim Van Landehem. I am the principal IAM architect with Moran. I specialize in identity and access management in higher education. I've been working primarily in the higher education space for, I think, around 19 years now at, lots of different places in the United States, Canada, and abroad. I've been with MTC for, I think, 10 years and a month now. And, prior to that, I worked for a system of higher education in Michigan that had 12 campuses, 12 small campuses. And I've worked at about 100 different education institutions since then. So good day, everyone. It's nice to meet you, and I'll turn things back over to Scott.
Thanks, Jim. So just a little bit about our practice. We do provide traditional cybersecurity and privacy consulting services like IT security program assessments, penetration testing, GLBA assessments. And we do have IAM implementation services, so teams that actually design and deploy identity technology. But the focus today, and really the information that you're going to hear from Jim and I about, comes out of our IAM strategy practice. And strategy practice has worked with well over 100 colleges to perform assessments, identify recommendations, and develop roadmaps to move towards that mature IAM program. So we're leveraging that experience in this session today. This is just a quick slide or overview of the types of experience and expertise that we have. We've really worked with a huge swath and variety of types of higher education institutions. And our practice, and hopefully this session today, will use that experience to provide things that are very tailored to each institution.
Thanks, Scott. And before we jump in, I just want to kind of talk about what IAM actually is, right? IAM means a lot of different things to a lot of people, but to paraphrase Gartner, I think at its, kind of distilled definition, IAM is about getting the right people, the right access to the right things at the right time. So, the question is, how is this possible with a technology platform alone? And I think the answer is that it is not. A proper IAM program acknowledges that there are also people, policies, and business processes behind the data that drives IAM. So it's extremely important that IAM and the business that drives it become aligned, as without that alignment, IAM will eventually fail to support the institutional needs and the business of education as a whole. In essence, what we're trying to assert is that IAM is not just plumbing or middleware, it's more than that. So this diagram here, I think, indicates that change seems really to be the only constant in higher ed, especially recently. This is the EDUCAUSE Top 10. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. If you haven't, I would highly recommend that you take a look at it. I think they recently just released the 2025 version too. But this one's focused on 2024 because that's where our use cases were. And so it talks about what is referred to as institutional resilience. The concept describes 10 influencing factors or circumstances that higher education institutions are either anticipating or responding to in order to minimize or control resulting consequences. So I can personally say from experience with dozens of institutions this year that many of these are seriously affecting the way higher education is conducting business. These institutional resilience initiatives are also more specifically affecting the technologies we use to provide the identities and access required to teach and learn, or even conduct research and provide care. So, for example, many higher education institutions are experiencing issues with the perceived value of traditional academics, and changing demographics and user expectations of the digital experience are resulting in shrinking enrollment, and that's compounded by fierce competition and decreased funding. There are also societal changes like the expanded use of hybrid and remote learning and work that increase demand for services from an internet native perspective. And there's also capital and regulatory stresses that are forcing institutions to adopt complex solutions to satisfy requirements from cyber insurance providers and privacy regulators. Schools are always responding to this in a number of ways, and many of these institutional resilience initiatives here intersect with, depend on, or are influenced by identity and access management, as I'll go on to assert here. So responses to these changes in the higher education landscape are achieving institutional readiness, usually predicated on utilizing technology to solve these problems. And, they're placing a heavy burden on IT to adapt and support an organization's needs with more complex technologies. Some common resilience initiatives that we've experienced this year, many institutions are turning to ERP modernization initiatives to support more complex business practices and greater flexibility. Also, removing barriers and obstacles from and streamlining student recruitment and admissions, as well as establishing and improving business analytics are resulting in people trying to become more agile and competitive. And, expanding non-traditional, non-degree learning programs to offset declining enrollment in traditional academics have been prominent this year. Also, there's been an increased use of automation to try to help people get what they need as soon as they need it, trying to kind of improve that administrative and operational efficiency. Also establishing zero trust with identity and access management as the cybersecurity perimeter to reduce risks and satisfy cyber insurance requirements. Obviously, implementation of new tools and policies to comply with increasingly complex regulations are a big part of that. So institutional resilience initiatives that intersect with identity are usually driven by one of these 4 strategic drivers. Business enablement, right? Allowing institutions to adapt and be flexible. Student engagement, allowing institutions to remain relevant in the eyes of their customers, students, and be competitive with other institutions. Operational efficiency, right? Making the best of limited resources by becoming more efficient and reducing redundancy, making things easier for people when they want to interact with technology. And, risk management, ensuring that all the above don't open the institution to undue risks. Each of these strategic drivers can be mapped, as you see in the diagram, to the resilience initiatives we talked about in the previous slide. And likewise, each of these resilience initiatives rely on technologies that are typically provided in the IM stack at a given institution. And to back up that assertion, I'll give you a few examples, right? ERP modernization requires more flexible and efficient identity data and access management to manage access to complex processes and provide right-size access to sensitive data. Recruiting, admissions, and CRM reform requires real-time provisioning and the implementation of new tools such as customer IM, progressive profiling, and improved business analytics. Non-traditional, non-degree learning expansion requires an e-commerce driven, almost like a store, like an internet store, for real-time onboarding process that can be accomplished with SIAM, self-registration, and social identity tools, right? Making sure that people can go in, they can get an account, they can log in, they can pay a fee, and start taking their class right then. Day one readiness and administration of efficiency requires increased use of automation for birthright access, expansion of delegated administration, and a rationalized approach to request and approval workflows that are all available earlier and easier to understand. So I don't want to spend too much time there. What I really want to get into is telling some stories about where we got this information, right? So to support those assertions that I've made up to this point, that alignment and institutional collaboration depends upon IM, and that IM enables continuous improvement and transformational change. I'll share some anonymized use cases with you from 3 of our clients this year. I'll focus on telling you a few stories about them. One is an institution that's utilizing identity and access management and customer identity and access management to expand their non-degree and non-traditional program footprint. They're trying to offset a decline in that traditional academic enrollment and to streamline recruiting, onboarding, and try to modernize that digital experience, removing friction points in the process. One institution also utilizing identity and access management to support growth and expansion through mergers, acquisitions, partnerships, and collaborations. And then there's another one that's a statewide institution utilizing multilateral federation to establish an academic sharing program across 10 small campuses to bring flexibility to their population and to be more competitive and less redundant in their curriculum. So the first one, non-traditional education, starting back in 2023, actually, this client reached out to us to help them establish a plan and a roadmap for modernizing their IM practices to really just kind of support an institution-wide initiative to enhance the digital experience. This client, has been seeing decline in traditional academics, but a sharp increase in the non-traditional non-degree learners. The latter was growing so much that they actually began running into issues with how their IM environment was largely dependent upon their SIS and ERP data to drive the enrollment process. And although the IM system they had works extremely well for traditional academics that are typically, calendar run or batch based, right? You do admissions in the spring and you do awards in the late spring, and then people are awarded in the summer. There's that whole process. It's based on the calendar year. It just doesn't really work well for the short-term learner process. And although they started to see how that traditional IM process was creating barriers and delays for their onboarding, and it really did result in some loss of business for those non-traditional programs because as people are becoming frustrated with that user experience, encountering friction points that stop them, right, they're losing opportunities and going elsewhere. So we assisted this client in establishing a plan to complete a roadmap for implementing SIAM tools and integrate them with their internal workforce IM system to remove those barriers and friction points, streamline onboarding, and provide real-time provisioning for everyone associated with the institution. This plan also included establishing increased analytics and progressive profiling to position them to respond more quickly to trends and changes in the market so that they could maximize intake of their prospects in a transactional e-commerce way, right? Building that shopping cart-like experience for, classes, courses, programs, certificates. So, this client is currently through the first year of the roadmap, and we are actually still working with them on a daily basis to help them accomplish this goal. We're currently in the development phase for the SIAM identity integration, and are very close to implementing their real-time provisioning with a go live for the rest of this in March 2025, which will, enable them to kind of revolutionize their onboarding and admissions process for not just, non-traditional students, but also for their traditional academics as well. So this specific use case, I think, really tells a story about how IM can influence transformational change in an institution by adapting to a growing market during the contraction of another. So the next use case, also starting back in 2023, this client reached out to us to help them establish a plan and roadmap for modernizing their IM practices and to support their new student information system replacement. The client is really a long-time, well-established, not-for-profit school that's currently 100% online. So they've done well in recent years, but the declining the declining perceptions of the value of higher education, the enrollment crisis, and changing demographics, focusing on 100% online degree programs is leading to minimal growth for them. Institutional leadership is trying to find a way to grow and expand during a time when growth is difficult, especially for smaller institutions. And so the conclusion they came to was to leverage mergers, acquisitions, and partnerships to expand teaching and learning opportunities for the institution. The problem with this approach was that their homegrown student information system and identity and access management services were not, meeting the needs, not flexible enough to meet those complex data and business process challenges with integrating across multiple organizations. So their processes, just couldn't support, all these different organizations working together. So this, in conjunction with, limited staffing, created a situation where they were unable to comply with the leadership direction to, support these mergers, acquisitions, and partnerships. And so I'd say one of the institutional resilience initiatives that was very important to university leadership was adapting to the future of education, right? Leveraging things outside of that traditional academic arena. And so during our initial engagement, we helped the institution to develop an IM strategy, vision, and roadmap that provided a path toward modernizing IM to support the acquisition approach to growth, while also improving many other IM issues like providing day one access, real-time provisioning, and data systems integration and matching for identities across dispersed identity and student information systems. So our engagement led to an IM program designed to address their issues and get out of the way of their resilience initiatives. The client today is currently working to procure an IM platform and a new student information system capable of supporting their resilience initiatives. And they're working towards, requirements gathering and design for both initiatives. But what I think this specific use case really tells a story about how IM can influence transformational change in an institution by increasing operational flexibility, diving deep into data, and really trying to support those institutional strategic initiatives. So the last use case I want to cover is, earlier this year, this client reached out to us to help them establish a plan and roadmap to support a statewide initiative to support academic sharing across 11 independent institutions in a state university system. These aren't big universities. They're all pretty small, and they all had their own programs and curriculum, and they were really struggling because there was so much redundancy across these schools. So they chose to look at this academic sharing initiative where people could cross-register for classes across campuses. And so each of these institutions had their own decentralized IT services, which included IM. These schools fortunately did share a system-wide student information system, though, which was the foundation for the academic sharing initiative. And like I said, the goal of this was to bring flexibility to their student population, deduplicate academic program development and maintenance without really limiting access, trying to be more competitive by sharing that information, right? If everybody has their own economics program at these 10 different schools, right? That's 10 different programs that somebody's managing. But if one school has a really good economics program, then they can share that with the rest of the schools and everyone benefits. So the enrollment crisis really had been hitting them hard, all of these institutions really, and a response became an imperative. I mean, the biggest problem with, the approach was that their decentralized IM environment just wouldn't really work for it. So we worked with this university system to compose a strategy to support cross-registration enrollment for their learning environment. The solution included establishing an academic sharing framework, defining the rules of engagement and guidelines to ensure seamless user experience across institutions. And when a student from one institution, their home institution, cross-registers for a course in another institution, their teaching institution, that student needs to log in to the teaching institution's learning services, their LMS, with their home institution credentials. So to enable this, we architected a multilateral federation solution that will allow each student to access any school's resources they are affiliated with using their credential from their home institution. And this is enabling the state system to provide a service to support authentication and authorization for cross-registered students, where the authentication is controlled by the home institution and the authorization is controlled by the teaching institution. This client is currently in their procurement phase for the multilateral federation solution. That's almost completed, and we're starting to engage with them in designing and deploying the solution actually as of last week. So this specific use case, I think, really tells a story about how IM can influence transformational change by collaborating across multiple institutions for a competitive advantage and enhancing the digital experience and for increasing operational efficiency. So on this next slide, I'll turn it back over to Scott to close things out, and maybe we'll have a minute or two left for questions if anyone has them.
That was fantastic. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, on this final slide, I just want to reiterate where Jim began and focus on some of the practical things that need to be addressed to achieve some of the transformational change that some of our clients are working towards. As Jim started in the beginning, identity and access management isn't simply a technical challenge. Sure, selecting, implementing, supporting, and leveraging new, modern, flexible solutions are a part of the plan for each of these institutions we discussed today. But identity and access management is a business opportunity. And that means to be successful, a mature IAM program must be capable of continuously partnering with the business, with the functional stakeholders across your campus. So if we look at some of the key parts of an IAM program, we've selected 4 here. When you think about how your institution can go about developing lifecycle policies that define the user experience from an onboarding, notification, and access perspective for your applicants, students, alum, staff, faculty, adjunct, etc., to develop lifecycle policies that meet the academic and business requirements of your institution requires engaging with and collaborating with the people who know the business. Those same stakeholders may be required participants and champions of business process change. Things like day one work readiness for staff. Things like having adjunct faculty fully prepared to engage students in classes, even when they're onboarded during the first week or later of the semester, require cooperation, collaboration, and working with deans and academics, working with HR, and establishing a level of collaboration and shared awareness about how institutional data and departmental business processes impact the experience of our students, but also can potentially be the root of risks to our institution when it comes to access management, access governance. And ultimately, though, all of these things are not going to be successful without strategic alignment, right? Being able to raise awareness and establish that collaborative relationship across campus is in part driven by and the result of being aligned with the most important goals of your peers across the campus. And so the development of an IAM program, while supporting the selection and implementation and use of modern tools, really has to contain each of these 4 areas if you're going to accomplish continuous improvement and move towards true digital transformation on the campus. So I think that is all we have for today. Are there any questions that you'd like to raise? Be entered into chat. We are offering opportunities to meet, consult, provide input on our experience. And you can use the QR code there if you're interested in speaking with Jim more about the types of use cases you have on your campus.
Don't be shy. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Jim. It was a wonderful presentation and very informative. Don't be shy. We've got the experts here on the webinar. Please let us know. Come off mute or maybe type it in. Type your question in the chat really quick. If you've got any questions, anything. Scott, Jim, you know that I am uncomfortable with long silences, so I'm going to give it a going, gone. But say, well, anyone have any questions? Okay, Scott, Jim, you guys must have answered every question these guys have. So Excited. Again, congratulations on a good
Yeah.
presentation. Everyone, thanks so much for being a part of this and learning a little bit more about IME. And if you have any questions, you can definitely get that QR code, snap a picture of it, and go to their website. You can actually get their ideas and thoughts. But Scott, Jim, once again, thanks so much for your wonderful presentation today. And everyone, thank you for being a part of this webinar. And hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.